Love her, care for her, and definitely share the house with her.
And make sure you feed her.
Y'all be sweet to each other.
Catherine, just be very patient.
Have a great life in California. We'll come see you soon.
All right, we love you all. We love you all.
Catherine and I got married in 2004 and set off on this adventure to go to LA, which is, for us, the land of dreams. Just had the most beautiful 3 years of marriage.
Mixing up some rice cereal to give James his first food.
Well, I had just turned 26 years old, and I had had a baby a few months before, so life was wonderful for us. Jay was finishing his third year of law school at Pepperdine. We lived on campus at the Malibu location.
Jay, that's me. Jay, there's me. Jay.
Funny. Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
Jay.
From living on the beach in Malibu to pursuing our respective dreams, Catherine in the entertainment industry, me in the legal field, everything was almost too good to be true.
It was an ordinary day for Katherine Wolf.
I was standing in my kitchen, my son was down for a nap.
That in an instant changed her life forever.
My husband came home for lunch, and within a few minutes, I had fallen, collapsed.
Wolf had a devastating brain bleed. For this 26-year-old model, wife, and new mom, she had no idea that anything was wrong.
AVM, which is an arteriovenous malformation, the arteries and veins sort of grow in a tangle.
Right, yeah.
What happened that day?
The most concerning part was that something in the back of your head, because of the pressure, was already herniating.
Oh.
The pressure was so high that it was coming down to your spine, and it was on your neck.
Yeah.
And that is usually very, very bad.
Yeah.
So it was a tremendously concerning finding.
Yeah.
I very quickly looked for your husband, and he gave us permission to do the surgery as an emergency.
Yeah.
And I explained him that I was very concerned.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, the majority of people that we see with that herniation don't do well.
No.
The majority of them, they die.
Yeah.
To hear that my 26-year-old wife was going through this catastrophic circumstance in her brain that could take away her life was just too much to process. And literally, I've grown up in a pastor's home. My dad is a pastor, and so, we've seen the highs and lows of life. He's done like 700 funerals. So in my mind, I knew deep down, this could be the day that I'm one of those people, that the unthinkable happens to us. And that was not outside of the realm of the possible. I knew, and it was, one of the most horrific, 16 to 24 hours of my life, obviously. Thankfully, we were so blessed by the community that we had created, mostly through our church, Bel Air Pres in LA. Literally 100 people were in the waiting room most of the night, just surrounding me and praying for us and just, fellowshipping and just loving each other. And it was really one of the most beautiful experiences out of the clear blue, for people just to drop everything they were doing and to be by my side as Catherine was in the operating room was pretty unbelievable. And our families gathered as quickly as they could from across the country and were there with us. But literally, as Catherine was, in what was supposed to be like an 8-hour surgery that turned into, 12 hours and 16 hours, I kind of knew deep down that if she made it through the surgery that she was going to be okay. And I certainly didn't know how long that was going to take, what it would look like, the scars that it would leave on her and on our lives. But I did know deep down that if she made it through, she was going to be okay. And so 6 a.m. that morning, there was still probably about 10 of our really close friends there. And Catherine's mom had actually made it from Georgia at that point, and her sister was there too. And Dr. Gonzalez, who was Catherine's neurosurgeon, came walking down the hall and said she survived. And we don't know what the deficits will be, but there will be deficits. And in my mind, although that was so tragic to hear, I was just focused on the fact that she made it. And to this day, April 22nd, we call Katherine Live Day because, you know, sort of as life often presents us through that dark night or that dark valley, you know, you sort of don't know what the outcome is going to be. But for us, that morning broke with so much hope and possibility and really created this whole new era in our lives. It was going to be so different, but it was beautiful and it was going to be okay because Katherine lived that day.
I remember getting in the ambulance and I woke up a month and a half later. But once I began remembering again, I was in a very interesting situation because my brain was functioning. And so I was recognizing people, understanding surroundings to some degree, and yet I could not communicate. I had a trach in my neck, and for a number of reasons, was unable to speak normally. I used a spelling board to punch out words to communicate with people. So it was a very, very tough situation. And I began almost fanatically saying, I'm the same on the inside. And I had this deep desire for everyone around me to know that even though I was in this terrible state, I couldn't speak, I could not eat food, I was on feeding tube, I had 28 machines hooked up to me, all these things, and yet I was still the same Katherine on the inside. So I had a deep desire to communicate to that to my loved ones, particularly Jay.
Today we're leaving ICU at UCLA, taking all of our pictures down and decorations and cards. Then there's some of the machines she's been on, been helping her. It's been quite 6 weeks in our life. Hey, sweetheart. Ready to get out of here? Move on to the next step. It's done so good.
Many doctors wouldn't have even attempted the operation.
They did tell my family that it was extremely grave.
They thought you were going to die, clearly alive.
Right?
But it was a lot of work to overcome those obstacles in between.
Absolutely. You know, as miraculous as me actually living and surviving the surgery was, the real miraculous thing throughout this process has been my recovery.
She had to endure a lot of therapy.
For me, it was always almost an automatic response to get well. There was never a sense of I'm just going to stay in this hospital bed, or I'm going to stay in this wheelchair, or I'm going to stay in this feeding tube. I knew initially that it wouldn't necessarily be easy, and yet that had virtually no impact on my decision. I knew I'm just going to do what I need to do for today. And while I was still in the hospital, that was very, very limited. I would sit on the edge of my bed, and that was considered progress. Or I would be put in the standing frame for 5 minutes, and that was my workout for the day. So it wasn't as if I was doing, you know, marathon training to get well or anything like that. And it was very, very, very small steps.
About 3 months after we had been at the acute neuro rehab at UCLA, they said, you know, it's really time for Katherine to move on, and this will be best for her recovery. And, you know, in some strange way, we almost didn't want to. We felt safe there, and like she was progressing, and they said, really, Katherine would be a great candidate for Casa Colina's Transitional Living Center. Long story short, we sought a lot of advice from people in physical therapy and medical realms, and they said, you know, really, if this was our daughter or our sister, we would go to Casa Colina with her. So that day, my dad and I jumped in the car, literally. The moment we heard that information, drove right up to Casa Colina and took a tour of it. And I will never forget walking into this beautiful campus, which was so different, honestly, from a lot of the rehab facilities we had seen, where maybe the rehab facilities were a little bit of an afterthought, or they weren't kind of elevated to this level of comfort and beauty and you know, a sort of place of high regard. Casa Colina does that so well, and the moment we drove onto the campus, we just felt like this was a safe place and a beautiful place and a place where we could spend time and support Katherine. And we walked into the cafeteria, and I will never forget seeing this banner that said, "The miracles still continue," or "They still happen." And I've literally never been so struck by a sign, I feel like, in my life. And I said, this is definitely where we have to be. And so we signed up, and a couple of days later, Katherine transitioned. But I felt the weight of that decision on my shoulders so much, because I literally felt at 26 years old, I'm having to sign on the dotted line my wife's destiny, whether I take her here or here. And the ramifications of those decisions were weighing so heavily on me. But literally in that moment, I felt like we've had so many miracles happen in our situation that Casa Colina is going to be a place where many more will happen, and it was.
When I first got to Casa Colina, I could not even hold up my head. My neck muscles were not strong enough to hold my head up. So starting from there, my initial physical therapist had a lot of work to do with me to get me to a place where I could even control my own body enough to sit up, much less to walk again. So for months, Awan would work with me on relearning to use muscle groups and put weights certain places, and having me walk on my knees facing a mirror just to try to rebalance and force my brain to see myself walking on my knees. And then eventually I was doing aqua therapy with Christine, another physical therapist, and that further enabled me to work on my skills of balancing. Eventually I began to work with Esther, and we did months worth of walking with her, holding on to me. All of that finally equaling the result of being able to walk again today. And of course it's not perfect. It's not like it was before my injury at all. It is slow and delayed and with a cane, but no one has to be holding me in order for me to walk forward, and that's really the place of independence I've been able to reach.
Casa Colina also enabled us to live next door to their facility in these rental houses. That was one of the most amazing gifts, because living in LA, the distance that it is, it would not have been practical for us to have commuted, and we wanted to be there not only emotionally for Katherine, but physically be there with her as she was going through this. I didn't want her to feel like this was just her recovery, that she's got to have to do it, and I'm just going to have to try to figure out my thing and try to stay sane. Like, I wanted her to know she wasn't alone in any way, and ability to have a house where I could push her in her little wheelchair, back and forth from the house, and just have such access for her to be able to see James was a huge blessing. I think it was a huge reason why she was able to recover so much.
Once I was able to move to Casa Colina, Rachel, a wonderful speech therapist, worked very hard with me for many months to bring me to a place of eating food again. And I did. It worked, and I did eat again. It took a very, very long time, but it was successful, and it was not without daily, intense swallow therapy. I actually had never even heard of anyone who never ate again. And so when that was presented to me as, well, your swallowing muscles have been damaged, we don't know if swallowing food will be possible for you, it just didn't sit well with me. I didn't even understand how that could be possible. Everybody eats. Even more than that, I love food. So for me personally, it was horrible from the standpoint of I absolutely love to eat. I'm very, very grateful that I can eat, even if it's not the same.
I think Katherine and I, again, had a hard time transitioning, because Casa Colina and Pomona and Claremont Village had become our home in a way we never thought it could have been, really. It seemed more just like it was going to be a quick means to an end or something, but it was surprising how close we got to that community, and really how in love we became with that, the whole staff at Casa Colina, and that place and that little home that we lived in. As much support as we've had, and as many opportunities as we've had, even still it was really hard trying to figure out where we fit again in LA and in our old group and in our friends and in our church. And it took a little while to transition, and even with me, you know, I was at a really good breaking point in some strange ways when Catherine got sick, because I was right, you know, jumping off from this educational school period into a new phase of life. But that sort of break extended, you know, about 2 years, and it was a little bit, it was hard letting go sort of some of the reins of being a full-time caregiver, to try to shift my focus back towards, you know, bringing in some money for the family, finding out what my career next steps were going to be, just really shifting focus from what it had been. And again, we've been so thankful and blessed as we've gone to this new phase to have opportunities. Currently, I work from home with a great friends company, and so the amount of flexibility that enables me to still be a big part of Catherine's recovery and therapy, and help my child, you know, and so we're juggling a lot of different balls still, and it's tricky a lot of times, but we're making it work, and we're figuring out how to continue to let what has happened to us inspire and inspire other people, but not define us and limit us.